Snow fell like ash. The night Michael Harris stayed late at the office. One more board call. One more line item to push into the black before Christmas. Midtown's alleys were thin knives of wind, neon bleeding into puddles. And the city smelled faintly of hot metal and stale coffee. Turning the corner behind a shuttered bakery, he saw what he thought was a torn bag slumped over a heap of trash. Then the bag breathed. A child's mittened hand, pale and shaking, clutched a threadbare doll. The girl's lips were blue. "Hey," Michael said, the word more prayer than sound. She opened her eyes, startling winter blue, and tried to roll away, as if hiding would cost less than being found. "Please don't take me back," she rasped. From deeper in the alley came the hum of an idling engine and the shape of a dark SUV that wasn't there a moment before. The doll fell. Her plea hung in the frozen air. Michael Harris was 36, a father, and the youngest CEO in the history of Norcross Dynamics, a company people described the way they described skyscrapers: glassy, efficient, a marvel of engineering that made some feel small. Michael was not cruel, but the world had trained him to carry his kindness like a delicate glass inside a steel case. 3 years earlier he'd buried his wife, Anna, and learned how grief made every hallway echo. He didn't plan on stopping. Not in that alley. Not in that wind. Not when he had promised his 8-year-old son Jack that tomorrow morning, Christmas Eve, they would drive north to the lake cabin and decorate the little artificial tree that still shed glitter after all these years. But the girl's eyes, how they tried to be brave, broke something open he had kept welded shut. He shrugged off his wool coat and wrapped it around her. "What's your name?" Silence. Then, so softly, he had to bend to hear. "Emily." "How old are you, Emily?" A pause. 7. Somewhere behind them, the SUV's engine coughed, moved a few feet, stopped again, as if the driver were measuring the distance between mercy and business. Michael scooped Emily into his arms. She was frighteningly light, like cold laundry, all bone and panic. Her knit hat was dusted with snow. A tin chain glinted at her throat with a tiny letter H. When he turned toward Fifth Avenue, the SUV pulled out, steady and patient. Traffic lights made brief, holy circles on the windshield as Michael carried Emily the last half-block to his car. He clicked the fob, bundled her into the back seat, and cranked the heat. Her fingers, chapped and raw, clutched the doll to her chest. The SUV glided past and kept going. He exhaled when it turned at the end of the block, then tensed again when it looped the next corner and reappeared in his rear view, slowing, deciding. He pulled away from the curb. "Hospital," he said aloud, convincing himself. "We'll get you warm and checked." "No." Her voice cracked. She shook her head so fiercely the hat slipped, revealing a line of bruises like fading fingerprints along her hairline. "Please don't. They'll find me there." "They?" Her eyes filled, but didn't spill. "The men, in suits." Michael tightened his grip on the wheel, a reflex from another lifetime, one in which he had street sense, and drove a second-hand Jeep, not a company sedan. "Emily, are you hurt?" "I can walk," she whispered. As if that answered something bigger. The SUV's lights flared in the mirror. Michael made a sudden turn down a narrower street. One he knew from long ago dinners with Anna, another left, then an illegal U-turn while a taxi honked its soul out. The SUV didn't follow. For a few breaths, the night was only tires on slush, the soft hiss of the heater, and the small sound of Emily shivering in borrowed wool. Michael eased a glance at her in the mirror. The chain at her throat, the little H, caught the dashboard glow. "Emily," he said gently, "who gave you the necklace?" Her fingers fluttered to the charm, then fell away. "My mom." Before she went to heaven, Michael swallowed. He had avoided that word with Jack as long as he could. Then one night, it had sat on the couch between them like a visitor. Heaven. It did not answer an 8-year-old's why, but it gave the grief a doorway. Do you have anyone I can call? A grandmother? She shook her head, then a hesitant nod, as if memory were a bad light bulb flickering on. There used to be a big house, doors that locked. A man with gray hair. He said my name wrong, like it hurt his mouth. Do you remember his name? Her face closed. They said if I remembered things, bad things would happen. At the next red light, a police cruiser idled opposite. The SUV was gone. Michael's hands shook, the adrenaline wolf slipping its paw off his chest. He could still go to the hospital. He could still call CPS and file a report like a good citizen. But the fact that Emily feared the systems designed to keep her safe crawled along his spine like electricity. The light turned. He drove not to the hospital, not to his penthouse with its impersonal eagles nest view, but to Park Slope, to the brownstone where his son slept with a nightlight shaped like a moon. Jack met them at the top of the stairs in socked feet and a Batman t-shirt, hair bed-pressed and hopeful. Is it snowing big yet? Can we leave early? Dad, who's... He stopped when he saw Emily, the coat swallowing her. This is Emily, Michael said. She came in from the cold. We're going to help her warm up, okay? Jack nodded with a seriousness that made Michael's chest ache. He had become accustomed to Jack being older than his age when life demanded it. We have hot cocoa mix, Jack said to Emily, not to his father, the kind with the tiny marshmallows. Come on, there's a blanket on the couch. Emily flinched when the stairwell creaked, every small noise a potential alarm. It's safe, Jack said. And the quiet certainty in his voice worked like the simple magic children still believe the world has room for. They set Emily near the radiator, swaddled in a fleece that smelled faintly of laundry soap, and the lemon oil Michael used on the banister when he found himself polishing grief into wood. Her hands thawed, and as blood returned, she winced, then sighed. The doll hand-stitched, one-button eye, threadbare dress lay carefully on her lap, as if being introduced to life indoors. Jack brought 2 mugs, one for her and one that steamed in Michael's hands like a decision. Do you like Legos? Jack asked. We're building a snowplow. Emily's mouth twitched, half smile, half surrender. I like building houses for my doll. What's her name? Jack said, sitting cross-legged on the rug. The smallest pause. Penny. Hi, Penny, Jack said gravely to the doll. He looked up at Michael. Can she come to the cabin? We have extra blankets, and Mom's red scarf is still there. Michael could not answer. Not because he didn't want to, but because the world outside their brownstone felt suddenly like a chessboard where one careless move would expose his king and his heart. He took his phone to the kitchen and called a friend in the DA's office. A woman named Rachel Soto, who had once taught Jack to throw a baseball in Prospect Park, and who knew exactly how much rot hid inside respectable suits. What do you want me to do, Mike? Rachel said after he told her the bare, careful version. If I open a case, it'll move. But once it moves, you can't choose where it goes. I know, Michael said. There's something else. He described the SUV, the necklace, the fear of hospitals, the gray-haired man. Rachel's exhale crackled the line. You're not going to like this theory. Say it. You've made a few enemies. So has Norcross. If the girl is tied to one of them, I'm not using a child as leverage. I didn't say you would, Rachel said. I said they might think you will. Can you keep her safe until morning? I'll pull a favor and see what comes up with missing kids and that initial. Morning, Michael said, and looked into the living room where Jack had given Emily the honor of adding the last Lego piece to the snowplow. Yeah, I can do morning. He slept on the couch, facing the door. Dreams came in shard and color. Anna's hair on a pillow, a thermometer beeping 103, the smell of antiseptic that stayed with him for months like a ghost who'd paid rent. When he woke at 4, the house was blue with pre-dawn. Outside, the city had pulled a quiet over itself, like a blanket. He made pancakes. It was an old habit feed, the morning before. The morning feeds on you. Jack appeared first, then Emily, shy but drawn by the scent of butter and something ordinary. "Do you like blueberries?" Jack asked her. She nodded, fingertip tracing the rim of her plate, as if asking permission to be hungry. "Eat," Michael said, gentler than he meant. By 6, the street had begun its hum. By 7, Rachel texted, "Got a match. A girl named Emily, no last name on the record, removed from the system a year ago by a private guardianship order connected to one Richard Hale. Grandfather. Widower. Net worth a number that made even Michael feel poor. Richard's daughter Emily's mother had died in what was reported as an accident. The guardianship sealed most details. Michael knew the name. Everyone in his circles did. Hale was an old-line billionaire who believed philanthropy was a safer word for laundering reputation. Their companies had sparred in quiet ways, bids, poached engineers. A rumor or two leaked to the right reporter. Rachel called. If Hale wants her off the board, he has the lawyers to make it look legal, and the muscle to make it feel inevitable. She said men in suits. "Yeah. What can I do? Document everything. Keep her with you for now," Rachel said. "I'll file an emergency motion to appoint a temporary guardian ad litem that could give us a window to get Emily's statement on record. But if Hale's people make the first official move, they'll paint me as the kidnapper. Michael, be careful. If you have somewhere truly off-grid, go. I'll meet you there if I can." He hung up. Jack watched him from the doorway, hand on Penny's yarn hair. "Are we still going to the cabin?" Michael looked at Emily. She had eaten half a pancake and arranged the doll to watch the rest. Her eyes, blue and tired and older than 7, flicked to the window, then to him, as if reading his face for weather. "We're going," he said. "Boots, buddy." "And Emily, do you like car rides?" Her mouth did the half-smile again. "Sometimes." "Okay. Today we'll like them." They left the city under a sky that couldn't decide, and crossed into the white hush of upstate, as if stepping from a movie set into the piece of land where the script ran out. The cabin sat where a lake pretended to be asleep until summer woke it. Surrounded by pines that sang when the wind forgot the lyrics. The room with the stone fireplace still held the shape of past winter's Anna's scarf on a peg. A rough crayon family portrait on the fridge with an extra stick figure they'd drawn after Jack was born. Michael felt the familiar ache and let it pass through. The way you learn to stand in surf so the waves roll by instead of flattening you. Jack claimed his loft bed. Emily, after quiet negotiation, chose the window bunk so the doll could see outside. Michael stoked the fire, hung the kettle, and texted Rachel their coordinates. Snow thickened. The road disappeared as if the world had decided to erase access and force them to have only what they already had. In the afternoon, Emily found her voice in small phrases that opened like birds. The big house had a piano. No one played. She said, eyes on the glass, while flakes performed their private ballet. The gray man, he said, I had to be quiet, because quiet girls are safe. But he never was. Did he hurt you? Michael asked, careful. She shook her head and shrugged at the same time, the child's way of saying sometimes the hurt lives in the quiet, not the bruise. Who else lived there? Jack asked, building a fort with pillows. A woman with red nails who always smiled with her teeth, Emily said, and a man who called me kid even though he knew my name. Do you remember their names? A long pause. Mr. Fox. Miss Della. She frowned. No, not Della. Delaney. Michael wrote the names down. The kettle whistled like a warning. It came after dark, when wind climbed the chimney and the fire sang low. 3 slow raps, like a courtesy that expected gratitude. Michael stilled Jack with a finger and guided Emily behind the couch. He opened the door 4 inches, the chain latching the last 2. 2 men stood in the halo of the porch light. They wore expensive parkas over suits, a combination that always smelled like bloodless money. The older one had gray haircut like he cared what mirrors thought. The younger held nothing except a posture that said he could hold violence if asked. Evening, the gray man said. Mr. Harris, I presume. You are, Michael asked. An attorney for Mr. Hale. We've had quite a scare. A child under our protection went missing last night. We have court papers authorizing immediate return to custodial guardianship. Michael kept his face a hallway with no doors. You came a long way to knock nicely. The man smiled, a textbook chapter titled, Charm. There's a storm. Roads are getting tricky. We'd prefer to conclude this quickly and safely. Show me the papers, Michael said. The man held them up, just far enough that the legal language was a blur. You'll be able to review them in full when we're inside. I'll review them through the chain, Michael said, and had the small, savage pleasure of watching the man's smile strain. Mr. Harris. We can return with sheriff's deputies, the man said softly. Or we can do this without causing publicity. In the background, Emily's breath sawed the air. Jack's hand found Michael's, small and steady. Come back with deputies, Michael said, and closed the door. The younger man's knuckles hit the wood once, frustrated. A sound with its own signature. After a long moment, their footsteps retreated into the snow. Michael let out the breath he'd saved for emergencies and braced the door with a chair, not because it would stop anyone determined, but because sometimes ritual matters. He called Rachel. She picked up on the first ring. They found you? Hale's men. Papers I didn't read. I told them to bring deputies. Good, she said. I've got a judge reviewing an emergency petition to appoint a guardian ad litem. If that lands before the deputies, we have leverage. If not, keep your body cam on. I don't have. You do now, she said, and texted him a link to a secure app. Also, Michael, I have something else. Emily's mother's death there were inconsistencies in the toxicology that were quietly buried, and the chain at Emily's neck, the H, was a custom piece made by a jeweler on Madison who keeps a very particular client list. One of them is not Richard Hale. Then who? Richard's son, Rachel said. Name of Jonathan Hale. Deceased on paper 6 years. But there are transactions. If he's alive, Emily may be the heir he can't afford to acknowledge, or the witness he can't afford to let speak. Michael felt the floor tilt. So Emily is more than a ward, Rachel said. She's a living ledger line. They slept in shifts. Michael sat with his back against the door, phone on thigh, listening to the storm erase the world beyond the porch. Jack dreamed messy dreams, calling once, Mom? And quieted when Michael's hand found his shoulder. Emily, somewhere between safety and memory, whispered to Penny about houses that didn't lock. Near 2 a.m., the cabin's generator hiccuped and the lights snapped off. Firelight held the room in an amber bowl. Michael stood, stretched the ache from his neck, and checked the window. A pair of headlights ghosted through the trees far down the lane, then died. The way predators blink when they decide the patience game is cheaper than the chase. At 3, Emily rose and padded to the window bunk's edge. Can I ask a thing? she whispered. Anything, Michael said. Why are you nice? The question broke him in a place grief had already split. Because someone was nice to me when I needed it, he said. And because you deserve nice like air. Emily nodded like that made a kind of math. She touched the H on her chain. My mommy said this means hope. It does, Michael said. It also means Harris. So we'll share. She smiled with her whole face for the first time. At 9, a county cruiser inched its way up the lane, tires chewing ice. 2 deputies stepped out, faces redlined by the cold. Behind them, the gray attorney's SUV idled, as promised. Morning, the older deputy said. We've got papers from a judge authorizing a welfare check and return to custodial guardianship under Mr. Richard Hale. We'll need to see the child. Michael activated the app Rachel sent. You're being recorded. I'm Michael Harris. I have counsel moving an emergency petition to appoint a guardian ad litem. I'm asking you to wait for that ruling before transferring custody. The younger deputy, freckles and a Christmas tie beneath his coat, glanced at the attorney, then back at Michael. We're just here to make sure the kid's safe. She's warm, fed, and safe, Michael said. She was found sleeping outside in sub-freezing temperatures last night. She's expressed fear of being returned. The gray attorney leaned delicately on the word. Alleged fear. Children say many things. Michael opened the door wide enough for the deputies to see Emily in the living room. She held Jack's hand and lifted her chin like a soldier who knows the cost of flinching. Please don't make me go, she told the deputies, voice trembling but certain. They're not my family. The older deputy shifted. Something human flashed in his eyes. A memory maybe of a sister or a case that still clung. Can I ask you a couple questions, sweetheart? Emily nodded, and Michael stepped back, present but not looming. Do you know the name of the person who takes care of you? Mr. Fox, she said. And Miss Delaney. They said I was a secret. The deputies exchanged a look. Michael's phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. We got it. Guardian ad litem appointed. Judge orders status quo until hearing tomorrow 10 a.m. forwarding PDF. He showed the order. The deputies read, conferred, stepped away to radio their supervisor. The gray attorney's mouth thinned to a paper cut. When they returned, the older deputy nodded. Looks like the court wants the child to stay put until tomorrow. Sir, he added to the attorney, you can take it up at the hearing. The attorney arranged his features into civility. We'll be there, and Mr. Harris, do consider the reputational implications. The court of public opinion is unkind to men who insert themselves into families, not their own. Michael remembered the doll on the trash and the blue lips of a child, and felt something inside him decide to stop apologizing for breathing. Then don't lose kids, he said softly, and closed the door. Rachel arrived by dusk in a state car, with a trunk full of case law and protein bars. She hugged Jack, crouched to Emily's height, and produced a badge not as a threat but as a talisman. I'm on your side, she said. Sometimes the law gets there slower than it should. But we'll make it move. Over stew and cornbread, Rachel unfolded the picture. Jonathan Hale, officially dead in a boating accident 6 years earlier, was not as dead as paper liked to claim. Shell companies funneled payments to a private estate upstate that matched Emily's description of the big house. A piano no one played, doors that locked, a staff paid in cash. The guardianship order had been engineered by a judge, later quietly censured for bribe. Adjacent behavior then retired to Florida. Why hide Jonathan? Michael asked. Because he's the kind of liability money can fix only if no one takes a good, long look, Rachel said. If he's alive but in trouble addiction, criminal exposure, who knows Richard preserves the brand by declaring him dead while keeping him on ice. If Jonathan fathered Emily, she's the living proof of his not deadness. That chain? Rachel tapped the H at Emily's throat. Custom piece Jonathan bought for a woman named Grace Layton 8 years ago. Grace is Emily's mother's name. Michael closed his eyes. He could almost see the argument in the Hale penthouse brand. Scandal, the price of mistakes. In that argument, Emily was not a child, but a risk factor. "What's tomorrow look like?" he asked. "Combative," Rachel said. "We'll push for a forensic interview with a child specialist, full records from the guardianship, and an in-camera review of the sealed toxicology. They'll push for immediate return. In the meantime, we need Emily to rest and Jack to be Jack. Juries are made of people who remember what families look like." Michael glanced at the tree they'd leaned in the corner bare, waiting. "We'll give them a Christmas," he said. "Even if the world forgets it's that time." The next morning, the courthouse smelled like old paper and snowmelt. Richard Hale arrived, trailed by a minimalist lawyer with a 7-figure retainer and a face that had never cracked a smile in public. Richard was taller than photos suggested, white hair combed like a confession he'd never make. His eyes skimmed Emily, the way a banker skims a balance sheet. He did not look at Michael until the moment required theater. "Mr. Harris," he said, extending a hand that expected to be taken. "Thank you for your kindness. Family matters can grow messy when grief is fresh. I'm sure you understand." Michael heard Anna's laugh in his bones and decided not to shake hands with a man who called a child's terror a family matter. "I understand neglected children," he said. The judge, sharp, female, unimpressed, took the bench. Rachel argued like a scalpel. Hale's counsel argued like a steamroller. Emily's statement, carefully taken by a specialist, recorded, transcribed, was devastating in its tiny details. The smell of Mr. Fox's cologne, cedar and cold. The way Miss Delaney smiled without her eyes when saying, "Shh. Secrets are safe." The boat painting in the hall with the wrong date. When Rachel produced bank records suggesting Jonathan Hale was alive and residing at the estate where Emily had been held, the judge's pen stopped moving. "Counselor?" she asked Hale's attorney. "We object to the characterization," the man said smoothly. "Mr. Jonathan Hale is deceased." Rachel slid a photo across, a grainy telephoto of a man on the estate's balcony, profile unmistakably Hale. An affidavit from the jeweler came next. The toxicology report in a sealed envelope last. The judge leaned back. "This court is not, today, tasked with auditing the Hale family tree. It is tasked with the immediate safety of a 7-year-old child." She glanced at Emily, then at Michael and Jack. "Until a full evidentiary hearing, the child will remain in protective placement with Mr. Harris under the supervision of the guardian ad litem. All parties are enjoined from contact outside counsel. Mr. Harris, you will not leave the state." Her eyes moved to Richard. "Mr. Hale, if I learn of any attempt to circumvent this order, I will find the edge of my contempt powers and step over it." The gavel struck. The marble held the sound like it was grateful to have something worth echoing. Richard's lawyer moved to object. Richard touched his sleeve and shook his head. The smallest, tightest motion of a man who had lost the first skirmish and would now retreat to purchase a bigger army. As they exited, a man in a wool cap lingered at the edge of the rotunda, eyes hidden. He didn't fit too careful. Rachel saw him see Emily and touch his jaw, an old tell of someone who'd broken it once. "Mr. Fox," she murmured, and steered them away as deputies drifted nearer. They returned to the cabin for one more night, the judge's status quo wrapped around them like lawful fleece. Snow fell in the morning as if making up for every winter without miracles. They bought a tree from a roadside stand, where the vendor recognized Michael from a magazine cover and offered to tie the twine for free. Jack, solemn with purpose, chose the crooked one. Emily agreed. Crooked trees felt honest. They decorated with paper stars and the threadbare ornaments from years before, including the glass heart Anna had loved. Michael watched Emily place it carefully and realized he no longer feared that touching it would make it break. In the afternoon, a black sedan idled far down the road, then slid away when a state car rolled past. Rachel took calls on the porch, voice low, the kind of calm you learn when panic is unhelpful. "Warrant's coming," she said, re-entering, cheeks lit with cold. "That photo did it. If Jonathan's alive inside that estate, they'll find him. And if they find him, they'll find what he did or didn't do to Emily's mother. Truth has a way of burning off fog." Emily stood in the doorway, listening. The way children always overhear what you hope they won't. "If they find him," she asked, barely above breath, "will he take me?" "No," Rachel said, "not as a promise but as a verdict. He lost that right the first time someone told you to be a secret." Emily blinked, and for the first time her shoulders lowered from around her ears. That night they made hot chocolate and read The Velveteen Rabbit by firelight. When they reached the part about becoming real hurting sometimes, Emily whispered, "I think I am." "You are," Jack said fiercely, the way only kids can mean it. Later, when the house had quieted to the soft, shared rhythm of sleep, Michael stepped onto the porch. The sky was a black tablecloth pricked with ice. His phone hummed Rachel's text. "Arrests made. Jonathan in custody. Mr. Fox and Miss Delaney, too. Toxicology confirms homicide. Mother's death ruled suspicious. You did it. More tomorrow. Merry Christmas." He went inside, leaned against the doorframe, and let relief make him clumsy with gratitude. Emily stirred, sat up, blinked at him. "Is it morning?" "Almost," he said. "Close enough to count." She padded over and climbed into the old armchair, tucking her knees under Michael's coat like it remembered the alley and wanted to keep the promise it had started. "Can I ask another thing?" "Always. Can I stay here for Christmas?" "Just this one?" He looked at her, at Jack drooling on his pillow in the loft, at the crooked tree and the heart that hadn't broken, and he felt the world shift a millimeter toward right. "You can stay," he said, voice rough. "As long as you need. Hope?" she said, touching the H at her throat. "Harris," he said, and smiled. "Sometimes they're the same." Snow went on falling, soft and stubborn. In the morning, the world would return. Hearings, headlines, settlement, offers aimed like missiles at his conscience. But for now, there was a small, warm family under a roof that had learned how to hold grief and joy without leaking. Michael sat in the chair and closed his eyes. For the first time in a long time, he dreamed of nothing that hurt. And outside the cabin, beyond the reach of the porch light, the storm finished its work and left the lake in silence. Flat, silver, honest, ready to reflect whatever came next.